Okay, I think we'll maybe make a start. Is that okay for everybody?
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Okay, well, welcome everybody to tonight's Cumbernauld Community Board. Thanks everybody for coming along. It's so difficult to try and keep track of who's on because there's so many different screens, but welcome everybody, and I think there's a couple of new people joining us tonight, so that's really good, and the more the merrier, I think. So welcome to them. Okay, we'll take apologies. Anybody get any apologies?
Yeah, yes, Chair. There's a few. We've got Councillor Danny Ashraf, Councillor Junaida Ashraf, Councillor Graham, Tom Harton from Watches Grow, and Sally Wilson from Cumbernauld Theatre.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else get any apologies for anyone else?
Apologies from Emma Track, the MSYP. She's got an exam tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Cool. All right. We'll move on to minutes of the last meeting and matters arising. So first of all, can we agree that it is an accurate record of last meeting?
Yep, I'll propose that.
Okay. Have we got a seconder for that? Okay.
I'll second if I'm allowed.
Sorry, I didn't catch you. Willie, thank you. That's helpful. Great, thank you. Okay, any amendments to the minute? Are everybody happy with it? Okay, and we'll just quickly run through it. I don't think there are any actions that aren't covered on tonight's agenda. Lorraine was going to come back to us about internet dead spots in Cumbernauld. Does anybody know if that's been done? No. So that's maybe something that we could chase up for the next meeting, Christine, if that's okay. Okay. The item on the LDP is covered on tonight's agenda, so I think that probably covers us on the minutes. So we'll just go quickly back to the agenda. So yeah, the next item, Chair of Community Board arrangements. Just a reminder to everybody that if anybody would like to take a go at being chair, we would be really happy with that. So it's open there. If anybody would be interested in doing it, then please get in touch, and that would be fine. We'd be really happy with it. Well, I would. Okay.
I would take a stint at that, but I really think that the chair of the board should have a term of 1 year rather than this rotating every other meeting. There has to be some continuity here, and it might be a good idea for us to consider looking at having the chair in position for a year and creating a vice chair who would be the next chair, and in which case we have rotation then.
I think that makes sense, actually. It's because it does take a couple of meetings to kind of get into the swing of it. So I would be happy with that. I think. Any other?
There's papers go out talking about the chair when we have your good self chairing the meetings, but you're not established as the chair of the board. So we should create that properly and create the chair of the board. And I would propose your good self to take the first stint.
Thank you for that. But I can see what you're saying, and I do think it makes sense, definitely. Anybody else interested? Anybody get any other views on this?
Just Willie Goldie, I don't have any other views, but is there anything that we've got written in the constitution of the boards or that to say whether we can fix a term or that, or would it need to be a decision across all the boards? I'm happy with it. I don't have any issues with it, but it's just for those in better knowledge of the structures and whatever. Is there anything that would stop us doing that?
Chair, is it okay if I come in on that, Mark Costello?
Please.
Just the line that would be, the idea of the rotating chair was brought in to encourage as much community activity into that role as possible and give people options to see if they wanted to come into that If it suited them, fine. If not, then we can look at other alternatives. That was the reason behind that. But there's no stipulation that if the board wants to go down the road of having a longer term chair and somebody else to be part of that, then that's something we're happy to look at, as long as we retain the flexibility that if the individual decides not to do that or the other person decides not to do that, we can go back to previous arrangements. So, but it's so that the board can make their own decision on that basis if that's what they wanted to do, and that still has a community-led chair with an element of flexibility within it, with a vice chair who could maybe step in here and there. So I don't see any issues with that.
Cool. Thank you.
In that case, I'd be happy to second Suzanne as chair and propose Alec as vice chair.
Thanks, Willie.
Just to
Thank
get my
you.
revenge on him.
I think it does help to have it kind of a bit of stability. I think that does make it, it is. So we're saying a year from this meeting, so that would be the next 3 meetings then, is that right?
It would be sensible to start tonight.
Cool. Okay. Is anybody otherwise minded? Okay. So we'll take silence and the nodding heads as consent then, if that's all right. Okay. Thank you very much for that, folks. And I know that other people have said that they would be keen to get involved in the subgroups and chairing those. So that's something, again, that I think we'll look at maybe later in the agenda. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to General Community Board business and updates. And we're going to go first of all to Gerard, and he's going to talk about community champions. So Gerard McLaughlin.
Evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gerard McLaughlin. I'm one of the heads of education and families. Just as the chair has just said, it's to give you an update regarding community champions. There was a briefing note that was sent. It was produced by one of our community partnership managers and was sent to elected members just around about the middle of May, I think it was. And it was to give a bit of an update about community champions. So the purpose of the note that went to the members was to update them on the development of the roles of 9 heads of service. So that would be including myself, which are going to be and have been allocated as community champions in support of the Delivering for Communities approach, which was approved by one of our committees, the Policy and Strategy, back in December of last year. And basically, we have got 9 of our heads of service, and there was a feeling that there had to be a review of the structure of the council's senior management team to fully reflect the model and approach established for working with North Lancashire's communities across the 9 community board areas. So what that basically means is there's 9 heads of service. We have decided amongst ourselves, based on our own experiences, background, about which community board we would represent. And for myself, because I've been on and a link with this particular board, and I'm head of education for the North, and moving forward, there's only going to be 2 heads of education, one for the North and one for the South. It made sense that I would be for the Cumbernauld Community Board. This is a transition for us. I still have my remit as each of the other heads of service have their own specific remits, but this extra, I suppose, role is something that is being developed at the moment. And if you like, there's a bit of a transition happening. And probably what I'll do is I'll come back with a further update, probably not to the next meeting, but it's hoped that we'll have, this will be fully finalised by September about our roles and responsibilities. And I'll be able to, probably the best way is to do a very short presentation to you all about specifically our roles. I think what would be useful is that you have a bit of a background about the delivering for communities document. But as I say, each of the heads of service, the 9 have been allocated to each of the community boards, will be doing the same sort of very brief overview to each of the community boards to tell them about what their roles and responsibilities have been. Some of the heads of service have not been to any of the meetings. Myself, like a few of the other heads of service, have always been at the meetings, and we'll obviously be taking up that additional role, as I say, in due course. So it's really just to give you that very high level message about myself, my role, my link. I suppose you've elected a chair. Now you've now got your community champion, which is going to be myself for Cumbernauld. So you can start to see how things are starting to grow, develop. And I don't think there's anything else I'm supposed to add, but maybe Matt and Leanne can maybe help me out if there's anything else that you feel as if that I should be sharing this evening with the board.
Hi, Gerard. No, I think you've covered everything, Gerard, in relation to the role of the community champion, and there'll be further updates later on in the year as the position becomes clearer and more detailed. So hopefully we'll be able to pick up on that at a future board meeting.
Okay.
That's great. Thanks, Gerard. It is really good to have you formally on board, I suppose. I mean, I know you've been here helping us out anyway, so but it is good to have you formally on board, and it'll be great to be able to work together really for the betterment of the town, and that's something that I look forward to. So thank you. Anybody get any questions at this point? Nope. Okie dokie. Okay, so we're going to move on then to item number 6, which is flexible funding report, and that's over to Matt.
Thanks, Chair. The report was issued to the community board in relation to the flexible funding. This report provides information relating to the flexible funding, the tackling financial insecurity funding streams which have been allocated to local initiatives in North Lanarkshire. This funding is intended to support individuals and communities impacted during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really just to ask the community board to note the funding arrangements that have been implemented as detailed within the report, and that further information will be made available to the board as required going forward. The report details the areas where additional funding has already been spent and will be made available in the fairly near future. That's all the input in that report, Chair.
Thanks very much, Matt. Anybody get any points, questions, comments?
Hi, Suzanne. Billy here.
Billy, hi Billy.
Okay,
Glad you're with us, Billy.
I see I've managed to stay in this meeting. I don't know
That's
why.
brilliant.
I must be getting a good name now that I've managed to keep into it, that somebody's no jobbing me out of the meeting. Just Matt, on the funding, you know, what exactly is happening, Matt? You know, I mean, everybody's asking about funding, you know, especially the Campsie Board funding. I mean, it's like a non-starter. Could you tell me what's going on?
Matt, you happy to take that?
Yeah, I can certainly answer the point. Obviously, but the question Billy's asked isn't are you talking about the flex? I know you mentioned the Campsie fund, Billy. Is it you talking about the Flexi fund as well, or are you talking about
I am talking about both funding.
Right, the flexible fund. The assessments are almost completed. They'll be completed by the end of the week. So therefore, community groups, in terms of the funding to support local community groups, that aspect of the funding, I assume you're referring to, Billy, that should be issued probably towards the end of next week. Local community groups will start to get notification of the outcome from that, and that funding will be allocated to local groups. And like in regards to the Campsie board, for the funding from the Campsie board, that funding will be allocated once the board that has been formally dissolved and the applications from the cycle 1 that have been put forward being assessed, and outcomes from that will be notified to the Community Empowerment Committee in August if all goes well with the dissolution of the Campsie board.
But Matt, it seems to be a number. You know, I mean, we were asked to fill in applications for funding, and then it seems to have come to a stop. I know all about the dissolution of the Campsie board, but what actually sold all this up? I mean, it's a ridiculous situation. You send out applications and nobody knows. You're saying August. God almighty, that's miles away.
Yeah, the situation is, Billy, as we have contacted groups have applied regarding the Campsie funding, is that we can't allocate the funding until the funding is transferred from the Campsie board to the council. That can't happen until after dissolution. Dissolution hasn't taken place yet, so we can't take that forward at this stage. But as soon as we're in a position to do so, we will make progress with this.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Mark. I'm no further forward, but thanks anyway.
I think the good news is that the other funding we're looking at fairly soon, as in next week, and the Campsie's hopefully not too long into August. But thanks for that, Matt. That's been helpful. Okay, and I think the next item is you again, and that's the local development.
I think Lisa's got her hand up, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Lisa, I didn't see you there. Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry, it is about the Campsie board. Would you rather I kept it for any other business?
Does it relate to funding?
It does.
I think probably just take it just now then.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know about the delay to the Campsie grant. I did ask quite a few questions. So, for example, something that we applied for was time sensitive. So August is too late for us for that. Are we going to get a chance to rework our applications?
At the moment, the outcomes will be based on the current applications, so that we're not aware of anything that's time sensitive in relation to any particular applications at this stage, Lisa.
Ours did. Ours was for an event happening in September, which if we don't know we're getting money for, we can't possibly organise.
Well, in that case, it will be August before those decisions are actually made.
So would we be able to change our application then, given the delays?
Well, I think I'd better I'll speak to you off table regarding that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
That's great, thank you. Anybody else that I've missed? No. Okie dokie. Okay, Matt, over to you again for the local development programme, please.
Thanks, Chair. Again, the report was issued in relation to a local development programme. The report allows us now to advise the community board on an update regarding current projects in the local development programme and gives details of future capital funding position across the 9 boards. You can see from the appendices within the report that was issued there that Cumbernauld has been allocated over £250,000 for year 1 of the 5-year capital programme. At the moment on the holding list, there's about 300 roughly estimated in figures in terms of some ideas about regarding some of the projects that could potentially go forward, over £325,000, and it is more than that, because a couple there that's got to be confirmed against them because we're not sure even an idea of what those could cost. So in year 1 is very much oversubscribed in relation to the allocation to the projects that have been approved so far in principle. So what we're looking to do now is have the opportunity for our team to take forward the projects on the holding lists and look to identify the feasibility of the projects going forward in relation to the different types of project that have been approved in principle by the board, and look towards taking that forward to delivery where possible. But obviously, as I say, the number of projects and the amount of money that's in the budget leads to us to basically make the board aware that it will take more than 1 financial year to deliver on those projects. We won't be able to deliver all the projects in 1 financial year, and that will need to be spread over more than 1 financial year. But we'll certainly ensure the community board and are kept informed of the project progress, project development, any consultations, etc. that are required, and that will be done within our local communities going forward. Looking to prioritise on the basis of projects where there is wide community support, links to the local outcome improvement plan, and that it can be delivered within a reasonable budget. So that's really the approach we have at the moment. So just to make you aware of that, and to refer you to the formula that was used to distribute the funding that not only looks at population for the area, of the board area, but also the SIMD, the index of multiple deprivation statistics for the area, which impacts also on the amount of money that's available. But happy to take any points or questions, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Matt. I had a couple of questions that I wanted to raise, and I think one of the things for me was that, you know, it's great, first of all, that the items that Appendix 1 are either completed or are moving forward. That's really good, and that's a fairly hefty spend. It's about 120,000 or thereabouts, so that's really good. With regards to Appendix 2, there's quite a significant amount of issues around parking. But one of the things that I've noticed probably recently within the sort of Cumbernauld community are the instances that we're seeing just now of environmental incivility. And particularly I would see around the community park, the Cadbury Gully, which was only recently, just last week, vandalised quite heavily, and also around the Ravenswood Nature Reserve. And so one of my questions is around, is it possible to, I mean, again, recognising that we've got projections of money for the next 5 years, I would say that these things are probably fairly sort of high priority, I would say. And I'll take views on whether people agree with that or not, but is it possible for us to, I know that there's an item on community safety relating to CCTV, and I wondered if it was possible to move some of the money in year 1 into that area, maybe defer some of the projects into, I mean, we're going to have to defer some of the projects into year 2 anyway, because it doesn't cover the whole amount. But I wondered about maybe putting some additional money into community safety and looking at not only maybe some CCTV development, but things like, can we add in these areas in particular, things like more dog fouling bins, more litter bins? Is it possible to have, you know, dispensers for black bags, that type of thing? I just wanted to kick that about just now and see if anybody's got any viewpoints, and to see if anybody, first of all, is it possible to do that, and secondly, if anyone's got any viewpoints, and also maybe if Neil's here from, Neil is here from the police, maybe, oh sorry, maybe take some views on that as well.
Hi, certainly from a police point of view, you mentioned community park there, and certainly that's one of the areas that I was going to highlight in my piece later on, because we have seen an increase in reports of antisocial behaviour in that particular area, as well as several others. But community park is certainly one of the areas that's on the radar. You mentioned dog fouling as well, and there is certainly an increase in that, and I think kind of COVID restrictions has had an impact on that, because there's more dog walking. Or rather, there has been more dog walking over the last year than ever before. So there's obviously the linked issues with that. And hand in hand with that, we've seen a lot of kind of reports of dogs attacking either other dogs or people as well. So that's certainly one of the spikes that we've seen as well. So yeah, everything you've said kind of makes sense, to be honest. And any chance of an increase in bins for coping with dog waste would be absolutely fully supported from our end, that's for sure.
I think it was also reported that there was some willful fire raising in the community park as well. Is that right, David? If you're aware of that.
That's not come on my radar, Susan, but I can check the statistics on that and get back to you.
Okay.
It'll certainly be within my file logs if there isn't, but I've not been made aware of anything just yet.
I think certainly from our point of view, if I can come in again, not necessarily for a community park, but there was a willful fire raising at the rugby pitches up at Cumbernauld. Again, that was heavily linked to antisocial behaviour as well. It was an area of grassland that was setting fire, and there was a 13-year-old boy arrested and charged with that.
Okay, I mean, I'm just thinking, you know, would it be worth maybe trying to do sort of some mapping of hotspots to see, you know, from the sort of police, fire, and from the community aspects, you know, I've been able to identify those 3 areas, but obviously there might be more, other areas as well. Has anybody got any other views on any of that?
I think it's important that we realise something. Some of these things should be carrying insurance for vandalism and that type of thing. Do they? And is that going to be a responsibility from our budget to put things right after we have vandalism, or should it come out the central budget from the council? I haven't got my head round yet this funding aspect, because what's been said tonight is, folks, the money has all been allocated, and we've allocated too much, and we've got to try and trim it back. So this year we've got no money. And I just find that very peculiar that it comes out at this stage.
My understanding is that those are projects that have been suggested, but I don't think there's been any definite sort of commitments. Is that right, Matt? Can you pick that up?
Yeah, if I come in on that, these are projects that have been approved purely in principle. They're not. There's no designs been done on any of these projects. There's no out to contract or anything like that on that basis. When there's some ideas that have came from the local community, and we need to work those up now to determine how we can take them forward. But the money that's against them is an indicative budget, potentially what they would cost. I'm not saying that's what they would cost, or that they'll even go ahead, because what we need to do is we need to consult people locally. We need to determine whether or not these are the priorities that the community board want to take forward, which is why if the board wanted to make decisions that they wanted to move some things potentially into year 2 on that basis, which some things would need to do anyway, then that's what we can do. We can do that. We've still got some flexibility within that at this stage.
So it's not a tablet of stone?
No, absolutely not. And just on the other point there, Alec, just about the kind of maintenance and insurance things we do when we try to do the projects going forward to make them as low maintenance as possible, but we will put maintenance arrangements into the projects that we undertake as best we can, and we try and make it as low maintenance as possible. And insurance is a different issue which we'd need to get further information on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Goldie and then Adam Smith.
Just as the recent environment and transportation budget, there's additional funding put in for some environmental measures, which included CCTV and stuff for litter picking and fly tipping and whatever. I think that will be more on the environmental stuff, on fly tipping more than anything else. Your bin issue, the council has taken a decision to rationalise the amount of bins they've got, so you will have bigger capacity bins, probably along bin collection routes. So the potential for getting more dog waste bins, I would say, is unlikely. But the council will be embarking on an education programme trying to say to people, look, if there's not a bin, take it home with you or whatever. But there has been some additional money allocated through the environment transportation budget. I think there will be environmental protection officers taken on as well, which is a positive. So it might be worthwhile having a wee look at that and seeing how that money is going to be spent, what areas it's going to be spent on and whatever, because there is some coming in which wouldn't effectively affect our budget, but we may get some additions to it. But it's not an awful lot. I think it's about 500,000 across the entire authority, and there's an additional 28,000 or something. Matt might know better to what the figures are, but there is some money available, but how it will be used or that, I'm not 100% sure just now.
Can I just come in just on Councillor Goldie's point, Chair? Just pick up on what you're saying, Councillor Goldie, that's absolutely right. And we have been linking in with the team who will be delivering on that basis to ensure that we try and avoid any duplication of effort in relation to that in our budgets. But we're not spending money through our budgets that could be spent utilising that fund, and vice versa. If it's something we've already planned for longer term, we can look at that also. But we are talking to each other about that.
Alex, I'm sorry, Adam Smith.
Thank you. Just a few points I wanted to make. The list of LD projects, most of them were approved at a community matters meeting maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I know that because a number of the items in the list are mine. But there's some that have actually came off in that time as well, such as the car park at Cumbernauld Theatre, which is obviously now closed down. But there's an item on there for a Cumbernauld Workers Memorial. Now, it might have been assumed because I'm the chair of Cumbernauld Community Council that was for Cumbernauld, but actually it was Cumbernauld. It was Cumbernauld wide. So if we could amend that, and I'm happy to have discussions about potential locations and design of that. But I wanted to say as well that within the list, there are 2 items, one for Fisher Avenue and one for Montrose Gardens. Now, I might be wrong, but I think they should actually be on the Kilsyth list.
Matt, I can come in
Yeah.
on that. I think that might be right. That's just been an oversight. I think that maybe when we've been putting the information in, we'll have a look at that, Adam, and fix that. Apologies, I didn't even pick that up when I was reading the report, so I'm sorry. I should have picked that up because I was involved in that putting them on the list originally. So apologies, I've not picked that up.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leanne. Chair, if I can come in just on that point, we'll better double check that they're on the Kilsyth list just to make sure that they're in there. Thanks for letting us know about that one. Certainly we'll pick up on that, and I think one of the points I was going to raise about that report was to say that we're really interested in people who have put forward these projects in the past, that we will be asking for you, through the board here, to let us know about locations, about where you're looking for these kind of projects to be taken forward. And we were just today at the Community Empowerment Committee, we've got a new kind of, it's not an application form, it's just a form that we ask local groups, elected members even, to fill in, that gives some background to a project, so that we can, when people are putting a project forward, they can give us an idea what it's about, where it is, any idea of community backing for it, any consultation that might have taken place, etc. And we'll issue that to everybody following the board meetings over the next week or so, so that everybody can see that, and that's the kind of information we're looking for on the projects that are there, because we really want to start taking these projects forward now as soon as we can, for not just for the Cumbernauld board, but for the other 8 boards as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Billy, would you want to come in? You're on mute.
Me, I've been in.
Billy.
To Dan, it was just to say, come back and what Willie was saying, especially in fly tipping. We seem to be an area in Westfield that the council has not picked up. And it seems to be now the residents of Westfield seem to think they can dump anything and everything at this corner. It's cleared one day and the next day there's as much rubbish there again. And I think the council should maybe look at this and find out exactly what's going on. They can either put a camera up or do something, Suzanne, to do away with this, where this fly tipping's happening. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you. And I've got Alan Masterton.
Yeah, thank you. Just briefly, just pick on a point that Adam, I think, raised. Quite a lot of these items have been on this list for a couple of years now, so I'd just be slightly concerned about, now that we've got the budget, sort of pushing them back into future years. Obviously, not everything could be progressing this year, but I'd be look at like how long things have been on the list and waiting to actually get progressed, because some of these things, there isn't actually a budget in the council for them, so they just naturally end up with the community board. Like things like, I think it was yourself, Suzanne, that mentioned all the parking items. Like the council don't have a budget at all for additional parking in streets. So a lot of times, like, if a councillor or if constituents come to us about parking, then they just automatically get sent to the community board because it's the only budget available. And like some of these places, particularly like in my ward in Westfield or in Cumbernauld and places like that, a lot of these streets, there's really tight parking issues, and there is need for additional parking. So I know it might not be the sort of maybe the most glamorous thing, but there isn't actually any other place for this, for things like that to be progressed from. So maybe sort of almost look a bit more holistically about all the things that are on the list, and how long things have been there, and what's necessary and what's really needed. That was all really.
Thank you. It is a good point. I mean, parking in some particular areas is tight. I know that that's the case. I wonder if it would be helpful if we were to ask for some more detail against these projects, moving forward for the next meeting, and maybe also get some kind of scoping on what CCTV there is and what options would be around, maybe like redeployables and things like that, so that we can. I'm just conscious that we don't meet again until August, and then that gives us a bit of a tight turnaround in terms of getting the projects moving forward and actually getting them delivered in this financial year. Matt, have you got a view?
Yeah, I think what we're looking to do from the team is to take on board everything that you're saying here and try and come up with the best work plan possible we can for the projects that have been approved in principle by the board. I think if we left it to August, September before we could bring back suggestions for projects, we wouldn't be able to deliver the projects in this financial year, and that may ultimately have implications for the budget on that basis, and we don't want to be in that position. I think we want to be in the position that we start the ball rolling now in terms of trying to pull together some project briefs, and then see where we are with the budget after that, and then from that we can then determine, it's about determining the feasibility of projects, because we might look at some of these car parking projects or other projects that have been put forward, and they might not be cost effective. We might not be able to take them forward. The cost of them might be cost prohibitive. In some bases, it might not be the council land. There might be issues with the ground underneath, for example. Sometimes we go to do projects and there's water underneath, or there's gas, etc. that has to be moved. It can cost tens of thousands of pounds, and these kind of things stop a project in its tracks. So we need to do that kind of work anyway on these projects. I would suggest that we start to move these forward at this stage, and then come up with a plan and come back to the board and say that these are the ones that we can deliver as kind of quick fixes kind of thing, the ones that can be delivered within the budget. Other ones we might need to wait to a bit later in the year, and other ones may need to fall into subsequent years. So I would suggest we just need a wee bit of flexibility within our team to allow us to do that and keep the board informed of that going forward.
I'm certainly happy with that, and the fact that you're taking on board the comments from today. I've also got David Moore. Is that right?
Thanks, Chair. It was just to feedback on your earlier query there about the grass fires. So within the report I've submitted to the board, there was 11 within the last quarter of last year. And I've just looked at the detail. There was 3 in and around the Cumbernauld Cumbernauld Rugby Club area. The remaining ones are sporadic across the Cumbernauld area, so there's no kind of identifiable pattern there. What we do know coming into spring and summer, we will see a rise in secondary fires. All of the 11 fires are attributable to grass and bin fires outdoors, and it's certainly we were targeting the resources. We're still not allowed into school buildings just now, but we're engaging via Teams and delivering that kind of fire setting message through Teams, and still engaging with the schools and trying to target that issue that way. So it was just to provide a wee update on your earlier query, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Okay, anyone else got any points? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Goldie.
It's just to kind of reinforce the point a wee bit that some of these projects actually well predate the community boards. Some have gone to community consultations, and some have had extensive input from officers in that already. So it's just really, I'm happy to leave it with the officers to have a wee look and see what's feasible and not feasible. As Leanne would know, there may be some difficulties in some areas withdrawing projects after spending some considerable time trying to move them forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for that. Alex, did you want back in again?
Yes. Is there a definitive line between the council responsibilities to do certain things and things that would be coming to the board for us to do? Because just taking up Councillor Masterson's point, there was no other place we could put it. So we put it into the community board budget. Now, knowing a bit about budgets, that's exactly what you do. But some of these things are responsibilities of the council. And we need to be careful that they're not getting shed down to us and using up our money.
Can I come in, Chair?
Please,
I
yes.
totally understand what you're saying, Alec, but it's not. I have to say, I don't think it is a matter of that. I think the situation is that it's not a case of that the council are putting this onto the board. This is the things that are coming from the community board, the local communities themselves. The council wouldn't do it. The council don't have a budget to do it. It's not a priority for the council in terms of core funding. But what they have decided is that they're allocating an amount of funding to local communities and allowing the local communities or giving the local communities the power to prioritise themselves what they wanted to do. Because if projects didn't come forward from the local communities, then we wouldn't just come up with car park ideas or heritage features, for example. We wouldn't do that on our own backs on that basis, and we would wait until the local communities or work the local communities to develop that. So I think this is a really good opportunity. It's a positive opportunity for local communities to have funding allocated to be spent in their own areas and in their local communities.
Can I come back in there, Chair? I would just point out that heritage projects I have no problem with. But areas, what you're saying is basically we haven't got the money in the budget that comes from the Scottish Government. Now, the reason you haven't got that is because you didn't stand up and fight the Scottish Government to get more money. You agreed to certain things, so you haven't got the budget. But that clarifies.
I can't comment on that at all. Sorry.
No, you can't. I was just making sure everybody understood where it went. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anyone else that I've missed? I'm trying to see all this.
Suzanne, can I just ask a question?
Sure, who's that? Sorry.
It's Mary from Cornerstone.
Absolutely.
Right. Are these budgets sitting under the participatory budgeting initiative? Where are the funds drawn from? Under the Scotland Act, the councils have got to target toward 1% of their budget for community projects.
No, this isn't funding for directly for participatory budget. And that's we're currently, the council's currently looking at mainstreaming participatory budget across North Lanarkshire, and that's something that will come out later on this year. We are targeting towards reaching 1% by March, April next year on that basis for a different approach to that. And that could go across a whole range of things that's still to be confirmed, Mary, in relation to participatory budgeting. This funding itself comes from the council's capital programme. The council's allocated £1.5 million per year to the local development programme for the next 5 years, and £2 million in year one, and with an extra 500 from the revenue budget.
Right, okay. It's just, I think we need to be very clear about what pots of money are available. And going forward, the PB initiative should dramatically change the opportunities for improvements in areas with community input.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Good point.
Right, fair enough, Suzanne. Thanks.
Cool. Any more? No. So I think what we've agreed, Matt, is that your team's going to go and have a look at this and kind of come back to us, scope out what you can do, and then come back to us in August, yeah?
Well, can I just confirm, if between now and August, if we can get to a stage where we can get some projects in the ground and start the ball rolling, I'm really looking to advise that's what we hope to do, that if we can get some of these projects consulted on, get them out to tender and start moving on, and then we can report back in the next round of boards and beyond that to let you know that we've started to progress some of these projects. That's really the way we'd rather than come back in August, September and just tell you where we are with that. We really want to start. It might be that might be well be the case at Barrere come that time, depends how much progress we can make. But we want to start going down the line of consulting, getting designs drawn up and starting to move projects forward. And I'm hoping that we can get away from the board tonight and start the ball rolling on that.
I think that would be helpful. I mean, I'd be quite happy if you wanted to maybe keep myself and Alex as chair and vice chair up to date on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not a problem. But just to want to clarify in terms of the input you had yourself, Chair, in relation to the additional funding to the community safety side of it, to consider the increasing that. Is that something you want us to increase that part of the budget? Because it really is just a hypothetical approach anyway on that basis. It's just to see whether we want to put more into that, or can we consider taking that further forward. It's something that's an indicative budget anyway. But if we do come up with some ideas that, because you mentioned they're doing the hotspot survey for the park, we can get an idea of the CCTV in that area. In fact, the whole of Cumbernauld area, to determine what CCTV is in Cumbernauld, in the park, etc., and what areas would benefit from a bit more investment on that basis. And we could do that, and that might lead to us coming back and saying, well, we might need to up that side of the budget a wee bit. So we can do that and report that back at a later date as well.
I do think that's worth considering. I mean, you know, we talk about seldom heard voices and things like that, and I think that, you know, picking up from sort of like social media across the town, and not necessarily people who are here or who are involved at this level, it certainly is very much an issue on those, you know, those areas. So I would be happy if you could come back on that. That'd be great.
Okay.
Everybody happy with that?
Yep.
Smashing. That's great. Thank you. Okay, I have to apologise. I missed item number 7 off the agenda, and that was levelling up funding. Now, I believe David Greer is going to speak to that.
Hi, thanks for inviting me to give you an update on the Levelling Up Fund. For those that don't know me, my name's David Greer. I'm the Growth Programme Manager for North Lanarkshire Council. So my responsibilities are around economic development, which includes the town centres, business and industry, but for my sins as well, I also deal with corporate external funding. So as you're probably aware, with Brexit, the European Social Fund and the European Regional Development Fund funding comes to an end towards the end of 2022. So the UK government has recently announced a couple of initial programmes. They'll come into place to replace these fundings, and one of them is called the UK Levelling Up Fund, which is a capital fund that will provide £4.8 billion across the UK, which will include £800 million, which has been specifically allocated to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. The deadline and timescales for the actual spend is really tight, so all the funding actually has to be spent by March 2024. So again, trying to establish and deliver capital programmes over that timescale is really quick, as you'll probably appreciate. The way that it kind of stacks up is it's based upon UK constituency areas. So basically every constituency across the UK is allowed to have one approved bid. So there can be more than one bid that goes in for an area, but only the area will only receive one approved bid. The maximum funding for the bids is up to £20 million per constituency, so it's quite a high level, but realistically we're not going to achieve those kind of levels. Looking at the kind of scale and the ratios, we're probably looking close to just over £400 million for Scotland. So again, looking across 32 local authorities, which will include a number of constituencies, you'll kind of realise that the sums don't kind of stack up for £20 million each. So it will be less than that, but that's the kind of maximum. Local authority areas are also allowed one transport bid as well. So in total, North Lanarkshire could apply for up to 5 bids. But again, the timescales for this are really tight, and the applications demand a full Treasury Green Book business case, which again, trying to establish that and pull that together again is as an instrumental amount of work. Given the kind of timescales for delivery, we are probably looking at 2 funding rounds, with the first deadline due on June the 18th next month, and then the last round probably due next year. The other thing as well, which is a requirement, is that there needs to be a 10% match funding put into the budget as well. So we're looking at the 2 rounds, and we are hopeful to take forward one bid from North Lanarkshire Council to the first round on June the 18th, and that will be focused upon delivering the vision for Cumbernauld Town Centre. We are looking to try and put in a bid of approximately about £8 million to support what will be a real essential and a real core element of delivering the vision for Cumbernauld Town Centre. I can't go into it in too much detail because there's lots of commercial sensitivity around it, and there's confidentiality requirements and so forth. So I can't go into the bid in full details around that. But I think the focus of it is about the kind of core elements that will promote the enabling works that's kind of required around the town visions, which again, hopefully most people have had a view and had a comment on the town visions. And again, for Cumbernauld, the communities have been very supportive of the plans and the visions behind it. And again, we are looking to take that for a finalised vision approval by committee in September. And this kind of coincides with when the proposed announcement for the bid to the first round would be made, probably August, September. And again, the spend has to be contractually committed by next March. So again, I realise it's all very quick timescales around here, but I think we've got to be kind of in it to win it, in terms of going ahead and trying to make the best use of the first round of funding. Because again, given there's probably only going to be 2 rounds, I think there'll be a greater challenge that will come in the second round when people have had a whole year to develop their projects. And I think that the work that we've done as a council and working with the communities, and various stakeholders behind it, to almost have those visions established and start to do the work that sits behind that, puts us in a really good position to try and take that bit forward and to secure that funding. I think one thing that we are looking for as part of the bid and what is a requirement of it is almost a letter of support from the community, basically highlighting, yes, we're well supportive of the bid going forward to drive those visions. And again, we can provide the wording if that can come from the community board. Again, we've got a lot of empirical evidence that's come from the consultation that's already been done on the town visions and already been done on the town hubs. So we do have that, but I think just to re-emphasise and promote that community support for the investment and the work that's going forward would be really useful for the bid. So again, I'm here to answer questions, and if there's no questions tonight, again, if no other questions want to come in through the community matters team, I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. That's really interesting. Any questions, any comments? Billy?
Yeah, David, really, I don't think I'll ever see your vision anyway, but just to think about it, I've had a good look at it, and I don't know where you're coming from, but I'll probably be able to bless you up above and say, I hope you can give your dream of a town centre which you're putting your vision. Honestly, looking at it, it seems to be all houses, very little retail, and I don't think the thought went into it for the community and the whole. Also, I done a film with BBC just before the elections, and I spoke about the tax office, about it going to be demolished next year, and of course a developer, I understand, has already bought the site. Needless to say, I was cut out of the TV programme because I wasn't allowed to talk about the vision and and about the tax office as well, and the devastating effect that's going to have in the town. So David, I don't know, I hope you succeed in your vision, but I doubt it very much.
Thanks, Billy. Thank you. Alex, I think I saw your hand up. Is that right?
I think this project we're not going to have another major project to get into this funding this year. So we've got the council have got the project of the town centre. And I would certainly propose that this board endorses that by a letter. And the words and music for that can be provided by Gerard himself.
Thanks very much for that. And I see Lisa nodding her head there. I take it that's a seconding then. Anybody otherwise minded to that, or any other comments? I can't see hands raised.
Chair, Councillor Bartley's got her hand up.
Claire, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. It was just I know it's a conversation I think Billy and I have had before, but it's just to say that the land that the tax office is on, and actually the building, is not owned by government or HMRC. The land and the building is owned by the developer, because HMRC sold off all of their buildings and all of their land a good many years ago, actually under when it was either Gordon Brown or Tony Blair were in charge, because this was a decision that was made. So the land does not belong to government or HMRC. So once that the tax office, or if the tax office goes, the developer can do whatever they want as long as they can get planning permission. It's not owned by us, the taxpayer, it's owned by the developer. And I think that's probably the least I say about that at the moment at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Know my opinion on it. But I agree with Alec about the town centre. I think you won't get many people that will, as I have said it many times in many council meetings, if you were to say that they needed volunteers to go and demolish the town centre, the whole of the town would be out. We would all be there in a queue, so as with to say, can we take a wee bit down? So there really wouldn't be an issue with that. We want something better. So I'm all for that.
Thanks, Claire. Anyone else before I bring Billy back in?
Can I come back in?
Yeah, I'm just going to see if there's anybody else first, Billy, and then I'll bring you back in. Anybody, any other hands? I'm not actually seeing hands up on here, so no, it looks like it's over to you then, Billy.
Understand what Claire was saying. I knew, the developer owned it, Claire. Really, the thing that I was on about was the UK government, and what they're doing to this town. That's what I'm talking about. They're the ones that's closing down the tax office, not the developer.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Billy.
Just say it like,
totally
Claire, I knew the developer owned the ground.
Yeah, we're on the same site. I mean, and apart from anything else, it's my job that's going as well.
Yeah.
So I've got a personal insight, as well as it's family and friends that are losing their jobs, as well as everything to do with the town. So we are both on the same side on this one, son. We both know that.
Yeah. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks both. That's really interesting. I think that's some really good points there. I would say, David, yeah, we're obviously the group are happy to endorse any application. And also, I think one of the things that I pick up is that people in Cumbernauld don't necessarily believe that there is going to be change. So this is a really positive step forward.
Yeah.
And, I think any opportunity like this, we've absolutely got to grasp it. So more power to you and all the very best. And I suppose if there's anything else that the board can do to assist, then please keep it.
That's absolutely ideal. What we'll do is I'll arrange with Matt for a letter with the wording. And again, if you want to change that in any way, more than happy, for amendments to be made. But apart from that, no, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to leave, but if there's any more questions, as I said, feel free to come through Community Matters, and I'm more than happy, to answer questions about UK Levelling Up Fund or other kind of government funding that's coming in to replace the social fund and the regional development funds. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. And all the best and good luck with your efforts. Okay, so now back onto the agenda, and it's Leanne with the LOIPs.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to give an overview of where we're at in terms of the development of the LOIP, and hopefully we'll get sign-off for the kind of overarching document tonight. But obviously there are other members of the subgroup of the community board that have developed the plan so far, so feel free to chip in if I miss anything. So you'll be aware that a short life working group has been meeting over the past few months to develop the final draft of the local outcome plan improvement plan for Cumbernauld. This is based on the priorities agreed at the last community board meeting. And the work, as you know, was to identify these priorities was informed by information and intelligence gained by a quite extensive community and stakeholder engagement, and also data profiles for the area. So the Short Life Working Group has obviously circulated the final draft out to the community board. I think the latest version was shared only late last week. And any feedback that's been received on that draft has been incorporated. There was very little actually in Cumbernauld. People seem to be quite happy with the content of the document. So I suppose what we were presenting when we circulated that final draft was a document that we were hoping that the community board would endorse tonight. I would just want to note that the content of the document is still in draft until you approve it tonight, and that it is in Word format. Obviously that's not what we'll use moving forward. That's not very community friendly. But the intention is if we can get the kind of content approved tonight, we would take it then and get some design work done, and develop it into a plan that's a lot more interactive and dynamic, that'll be published online and people can click in and out of the different bits that are relevant to them at any given time. We will also make a printed summary available as required also if people need that. And just to say that what we're asking, that the document that was circulated is very much the overarching document. It's the document that gives all the background and context and then gives an overview of each of the priorities for the Cumbernauld area. There's a template being produced for each of the priorities. In some areas, they've already started to set up subgroups specifically to drive the individual priorities. I think in Cumbernauld, the idea, the kind of thinking is that we probably want to do a wee bit of kind of stakeholder engagement around the individual priorities, and establish a subgroup from there so that we make sure we've got the right people in the subgroup can to develop this so far. Feel free to kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been my understanding, that there's still, so that the templates that sit behind each of the priorities are very early stage right now. There's information in them, but a lot of the action right there right now is about what is the baseline, what do we already know about that priority, who needs to be involved, who needs to lead. And I think that the subgroup is thinking that a wee bit further work's required just to bring together the key agencies that kind of support, that already deliver around these priorities in Cumbernauld, because we absolutely don't want duplication. The council services and partner agencies that are already supporting delivery around these key, so that we're pulling in what is the local action required, what do we actually need to do to support the delivery of these priorities as a community board, and who's the best place. Do we need a subgroup, or is there actually already an existing structure that would be able to drive that particular piece of work? So following approval, hopefully tonight, the next step, we would get some design work done and we would publish and launch the overarching documents for the Cumbernauld document for the Cumbernauld area. We would hope to undertake some kind of more, quite quickly actually, some local kind of stakeholder work around the individual priorities to agree leads and some of the kind of develop some of the actions, I suppose, into things that are a bit more measurable. And we would hope to bring a report to the community board at the next round, outlining the proposed approach around delivery of the individual priorities. Just to remind people that the priorities for Cumbernauld are public and community transport, green space, environmental quality, youth engagement and consultation, digital inclusion, targeted action with identified priorities across the board area for particular communities, food and financial inclusion, and community communication and engagement. I think we would probably hope that the subgroups for the board would align to those priorities eventually, but there are other subgroups that have been identified already through the community board that sit slightly to the side but kind of overlap. There is a digital one that was already suggested, which obviously fits in with the digital priority for the LOIP. There was a community safety one suggested, there was climate change, and then there was a subgroup suggested for LDP, which maybe in future would help the board to feel that they were kind of doing some of that earlier work around what the LDP project priorities are. So just a kind of reminder around those subgroups, if anybody's got a particular interest or experience or skills around any of those areas, whether it's the LOIP priorities or whether it's the other subgroups that have been suggested so far, just to please put your name forward through the Community Matters mailbox or by contacting anyone here really, but probably Christine in the first instance, and we would kind of start to, if we're starting to do that kind of stakeholder engagement work around the priorities or starting to establish the subgroups, we've at least got kind of notices of interest. And I know people probably have expressed interest so far, but just anyone else. I think the other point to make on this is it doesn't necessarily need to be people who have been coming to the community board so far. You know, there'll be other people, as somebody mentioned earlier, out within communities that are already delivering or have a real knowledge or skill around a particular area, and it, you know, would be fine to bring them in to guide and support some of this work. That was all I wanted to say, but I'm conscious that I've done a lot of talking and there were other, it wasn't really me who developed this plan, it was a whole kind of short life working group and subgroup, and there are several people on the call tonight that were involved in that. So if anybody else wants to chip in or say anything or tell me that what I've said is actually wrong, then I'm happy to hear that, and happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you. So anyone from that group, Billy?
Sorry, Chair, can I just say, just to reiterate that we are actually looking for the overarching LOIP document to be endorsed tonight to move to that next stage of development. Sorry, just to clarify that.
So we'll take some comments, questions, and then come back to that at the end, if that's okay. I've got Billy. Anyone else with hands up that wants to contribute? Alex, and Councillor Goldie. Okay, so Billy, we'll start with you.
Suzanne, it's just, as you know, I've not managed to get into a couple of the meetings, so I've missed quite a bit, you know, so I would really like to just to say to Leanne if I could maybe get in contact with her to catch up. And I've had a lot of trouble with my internet, you know, and I don't know how I managed to get in tonight. Maybe it's a new iPad, you know, but I'd like to maybe talk to you, Leanne, and see exactly, you know, what everything is, you know, the projects that we're looking at, if you don't mind.
Of course, Billy. Hopefully you've got my number, but I can certainly pass that over to you.
That'd be great, Leanne.
I don't know whether, do you want me to put my number in the chat bar for you? Will you be able to access that, or do you want me to email it to you?
Can you email it to me?
I will do. I'll do that tomorrow, Billy. All right, thanks.
Right, thank you. Thanks for Suzanne.
And it is good, Billy, that you're able to join us tonight, because I know we have been missing you the past couple of meetings, so you're obviously getting there with your technology.
You were probably, Suzanne, you were probably glad that I missed a couple.
Saying nothing.
I see
okay,
Mark
Alex.
there, he's definitely glad.
Alex, over to you.
It might be a good idea to take Councillor Goldie first.
Councillor Goldie, over to you.
He's got his hand up.
That's all right. I just like to reiterate what Leanne says there. I was part of the short life working group, and it was really good because we did have a lot of input from a lot of different people. A lot of the stuff was thought provoking. I don't think we fell out at any point in anything like that, but there was a lot of maybe changes in looking at priorities, and just I commend everyone that's been on it and put the input into it. I thought it really worked well, and thanks to the officers that facilitated it, because at times I know that their time was really short to try and draw things together, but quite happy with the way things have come out in the beginning. But as we say, it's a working document, it'll be a long-term thing. We'll see how it develops. Anyone else that wants to dip their toe in getting involved in any of the subgroups of that, I would highly recommend it, because it does give you some kind of input and insight into it. But I enjoyed being on it.
Thank you. Alex,
Just to thank Leanne, she, as always, has done an excellent overview of a document that took a considerable amount of time to do, but I can recommend it to the board. And in fact, I would propose that we accept it.
Smashing, thank you. Now I've got Matt. Do you want to come in on this item, Matt? And then Claire.
No, I don't want to come in this item, Chair.
Okay. Claire?
Yeah, I've just got one question with it, and it'll probably have been covered within the subgroup. It's just that it's targeting the identified communities. Now, I don't have a problem with Codrum at all. Obviously, most of you know I live there. So, but it's the Cabrain and Abernhill are the two areas within Cumbernauld with the highest deprivation, and that's why there's each of those areas has got 4 councillors attached to them. And I just wondered why the Codrum was stipulated rather than Abernhill. Can there sort of anything can be just explained on that? With an explanation on that, I would be an awful lot more comfortable with the document. I think the document is great, but I just obviously have concerns because the Abernhill has a much higher prevalence of deprivation than Codrum does. And as I say, it's those two areas, Cabrain and Codrum, have got input from having community officers and everything in them. So just to kind of get a background on that before I can say, yeah, I think the documents great, if possible.
You know, it's a really good point, Claire, and it was one that I would echo in terms of the stats from resilience, and you know that we know who we're having to target and where we're having to target. I see Councillor Goldie want to come in, so I guess
I'm willing to take the bullet on this one because it was something that we did have an awful lot of discussion about in the Short Life Working Group, and we looked at the fact that the Abernhill hub was coming up with the Abernhill town centre part, and we thought it would be better embraced at that point rather than an overarching thing, because I think the situation in Abernhill is there are areas of deprivation. They tend to be focused, whereas in Cabrain just now it's quite vast, and in Codrum it's starting to get that way. So we looked at it and we thought that because of the Abernhill hub coming up, that was probably a better area for that to sit. But it was a decision that we took as a Short Life Working Group. It doesn't exclude Abernhill from the plan. It doesn't specifically target it either, though. But unless anyone else in the group wants a word on that, but I think that was the kind of flavour of it.
Yeah, Councillor Goldie, I think that's right. I think that was certainly the rationale from the group, that it wasn't that Abernhill wasn't a priority, and clearly we would want to thread through the other priorities within the plan targeted. So if you look at the templates that sit behind the plan, which will be circulated again in due course, that's what we'll use to feed into report to the community board on the individual priorities. So they'll be a lot more detailed than that plan. There'll be a template for each of the priorities that gives all the targets and milestones and what we're the actions and progress. But so within each of those, there's one around targeting inequalities. So whether it's digital inclusion, or there is a section on targeting inequalities, and the idea was that you know, some areas would probably be just threaded throughout all the individual priorities, but there was just a feeling that there was still a need for that very targeted approach in Cabrain and Codrum. And I suppose the other option is that in Kilsyth specifically, they had a couple of areas that they wanted to kind of target, but they felt they didn't want to put that in the overarching plan because they felt maybe people living in those areas wouldn't necessarily want to see that as a headline published in the document. So what they've did is they've kept the actual priority headline more about targeted work in specific areas rather than specifying the areas, and then they've just kind of committed actions, you know, to kind of make sure that certain areas are threaded throughout all the other priorities, if that makes sense. So it'll be mentioned in the background templates, but not necessarily in the front-facing document. So that might be an option to consider to give you a bit of flexibility, that if an issue comes up in an area, that you've got the flexibility to say, right, we're going to target a bit of resource in that area for a wee while. So I don't know. I mean, but we can endorse the document with that recommendation if we agreed that tonight. But still make sure to keep that focused on Cabrain, obviously, because that'll be in the document in Codrum.
Sorry, if I could just have you in my indulgence there, Suzanne, I'm sorry. It just doesn't scan right, because everything else to do with council and to do with the community targets the two areas of deprivation in Cumbernauld, which is Cabrain and Abernhill. And this is the local office plan is not mentioning Abernhill at all. And I, as I say, I don't have an issue with Codrum, and I know Codrum has got its issues, but in comparison to issues in Abernhill, it has no comparison. I mean, even if you look at COVID, the number of cases, even with that were COVID related, were much higher in Abernhill, north, south, and Cabrain compared to even the rest of the town. There's all of the stats are there, and I'm just concerned. But there's an awful lot of really good work that has been done in Abernhill through different organisations, including people on the ground from your own team, Leanne. But I'm just concerned that this is a really important document, and it doesn't mention a huge part of Cumbernauld, which feels as if it's on the periphery already. And it's all about inclusion, and this is leaving this part out. I know it's the group have looked at it, but I still have real reservations and concern about it because it doesn't bring that in.
So, are there options? I think there might be two options then, and it's about either one, removing the names altogether, and having flexibility, or another option would maybe be to add Abernhill into that. I don't know what the views would be.
Susanna, Chair, I'm more than happy to take the views of the group. I mean, if we could endorse the document tonight but agree any changes that have to be made, and we can kind of circulate that those changes, then if we can approve the document pending certain changes, that I've got no problem with doing that. I think either option would be fine, but I suppose just some reassurance to Councillor Barclay that regardless of how explicit it is within the document, there will still be a focus from officers on Abernhill, because clearly there is going to be work around the hub, and you know that kind of work. But I think if everybody's in agreement that they either want to add an Abernhill or to keep that priority a bit more open-ended for publishing purposes, that it's just about targeting specific areas, but in the background documents that we'll use for reporting to the board make explicit reference to the 3 areas. I don't mind, officer or officer. It's not up to me, so it's up for I pass it over to the board to make that decision.
Okay, Alex, and then I'll come back to you, Claire, if you want to have a view on that.
I think what Claire's raising here is the dilemma we had on the group when we were looking at this. And as Willie says, we came down on the fact that there's a lot of work being done and going to be done in Abernhill. But basically, from the group point of view, I don't have any concern if we would include Abernhill and have all 3, which would be a lot fairer. Because we were always going to get this. If we just said Abernhill and Cabrain, we would have had a case for Codrum. So I think it's fair and just for that amendment to be made. And with that amendment, I would propose that the board accepts the report.
I would be happy with that, just to add it in. I think it's, and I have, as I said, I've absolutely no doubt that the community officers and everybody involved in Abernhill would be putting resource in that in. But I just feel this is such an important document that I think I would be happier that the 3 were included. And then how the resources and their targeted action goes, then that's another matter. But I would be happier if it was included within it. So I'm happy to say, but I'm a councillor. It's up to the rest of the people that are here tonight how they feel about that.
I would just want, Chair, just to clarify then what the amendment is. If we want to broaden it out and have the heading slightly more generic about, we will make sure there is targeted action in certain communities with no experience inequalities, and then the information sits behind that about what areas, or do you want to explicitly say Kilbrain, Kildrum and Abram Hill in the priority that's going to be published? Because I know there's a bit of concern raised about that in Kilsyth in particular. So I just want to clarify what is the amendment, and then I'm happy with that.
Well, the amendment I would propose is that we identify the areas as Kilbrain, Kildrum and Abram Hill. I think as a community board, we want to be open and clear rather than just putting something like they did in Kilsyth. We'll no name it so we don't have a problem. We looked at this very, very carefully and came up and had discussion, and we came up with two. And well, as I've said before, we were obviously going to have a case for the other one. Now that we have it, I think I would propose the amendment B, include the three and name them.
Okay, happy to take that amendment. And anybody otherwise minded? Billy?
Suzanne, I'm afraid I can't endorse a document I know nothing about.
Sorry, say
Or
again.
the group this group that's at this subgroup.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you there, Billy.
I'm saying I can't endorse a document that I don't know anything about, I've never read, I'm not sure, and I'm just learning tonight there was a group met and made these, you know, whatever. I'm not happy about that, I can tell you that.
It was circulated along with the agenda.
Chair, I think it went out as a separate document, but it was circulated at the same time to all board members, clearly stating that we were looking for endorsement tonight, and it's been circulated a few times in the past as well, just to clarify.
Yeah. Okay,
So
Billy.
it must have been like the meetings you missed me at.
Okay, so we can maybe get we'll get someone to send you another copy, Billy, and we'll note your result.
What's happened? I can't hear.
Sorry, I was muting there. I was saying we'll maybe get someone to send you a wee copy there, Billy.
Right, thanks, Suzanne.
Anyone otherwise minded, or are we happy to endorse with the amendment as proposed by Alex? Yeah, I'm going to take silence and nods as consent. Okay, so Leanne, that's you got the consent that you require. So, and it'll be really good to start seeing those subgroups starting to take off. I think we've talked about them for our subgroups for a wee while, so it'd be really good to get them moving. Okay, thank you for that, Leanne. That was really helpful. Matt, I think you were wanting to come in.
Just briefly, Chair, thanks. It was just something we mentioned at a previous board meeting regarding the board development sessions that we had discussed earlier in the board cycles. It's just to highlight that we've moved forward a bit on this now and to give you a wee update on that. In relation to the role of the community champions, we want to work together, as Gerard was saying earlier, to ensure that the board works together in a very positive way. And the boards are a successful model leading on recovery and delivering the plan for North Lanarkshire. And the discussion there around the LOIBs shows that the board's really keen to do that. In terms of the board development sessions, we want to focus on a number of issues. Some of the things we spoke about here tonight, LDP, PB, different types of funding coming from external and internal sources, etc. Funding not only that the council gets, but funding that our partners get in the police, fire, NHS, Lanarkshire, voluntary sector example. But to talk about that in a bit more detail so that the board members become a bit more familiar of what the processes are that people are talking about, and picking up just some things that Billy's mentioned there as well, just to become more familiar with the processes that we as a board will have to consider as we go forward. We want to include as many people as possible in that. In relation to that, we've looked at a few issues. For example, as I mentioned, one or two of them there, but more generally, partnership working, community engagement, the role of being a board member, the role of the chair, PB, community asset transfer, mental health and other health strategies within the Cumbernauld area, community safety. So what we want to do is we want to agree what the focus will be for these development sessions, and we're looking to pull together a survey that will go out to all the board members. You've asked to complete that survey about the main points you want to discuss, but also about the learning methods that would suit you best, and so that we can make we encourage people to learn about these different things in a variety of different ways, whether it's online, interactive, paper-based, whatever way you want to do that. We want to do it as wide-ranging way as possible to make it, again, as we mentioned earlier about the harder to reach groups also, we want to get those groups involved in this process so we can get as much discussion about the key issues as we go forward. So we're going to be pulling that together, and we're looking for somebody from the community board to be part of that, to determine how we pull that together, the best way to ask the questions. Fairly short-term approach to that, but if anybody's interested in that, please let us know, and we'll get you involved in that with our talent and organisational development team and colleagues from the communities team also to take that forward. And once we've done that, we'll then bring that back to the board and hopefully have an official launch of the board development sessions around about the time of the next cycle of boards, so that we can then go out and encourage people to get involved in this. This will tie in with the timelines for the heads of service as community champions also, and the induction process for any new members that come onto the board. We can put that in place as well. So that's what we're hoping to do. We'll continue, we'll monitor that, feedback to a further board, and over the next few months and get that out into the local communities as best we can in different methods. So if anybody's interested in that, you don't need to tell me tonight, but if you are interested in being part of that, then let me know and we'll get you involved in that process. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Matt. Any points, comments, questions?
You can stick me down on your list because I want to find out all about this funding.
There you go. That's great. Thank you, Alex.
Just to say in that one, Alex, the group I'm looking for at the moment, you won't know about all the information at that particular time. It'll help set it up for the future. But if you want to be part of how we gather that information, more than welcome.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I've done some of this induction stuff before.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds great. Thanks for that, Alec.
And myself, Matt.
There you go.
Right, cheers, Billy. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Okay. I think that covers everything under the General Community Board business and updates. We don't have any petitions. So we're going to move straight on to community matters, and that's input from the local groups. Now, Adam, you've got 3 points here. I don't know if you want to run them all together or if you want to take them separately, but it's over to you.
Thank you. It's probably best that I take them all separately and there can be a bit of discussion if time allows. So the first item was on a resident parking strategy. Now, about 5 years ago, back when this forum a local partnership, I had proposed that Cumbernauld needed some kind of parking strategy because, as we talked about earlier on under the local development programme, parking is really chronic in a number of areas of Cumbernauld. Because, obviously Cumbernauld was designed as a new town around 50, 60 years ago. It wasn't envisioned that people would have the number of cars that they do today. So what we really need, I think, is rather than chipping away at the problem here and there with little bits of funding from the local development programme, I think we need a wider piece of work to look at just how bad parking is throughout the town and to ring fence some funding to task, because what we're seeing in a number of areas of the town, using Cumbernauld as an example, since I'm the chair of Community Council, is that we have people parking in pavements, on roads, in grassed areas because they have absolutely nowhere else to park. And using even the example of Mon Street into Bolton Road, we managed to get some additional parking through the local development programme, but those additional spaces are still not enough, and we still have people parking on the grass and in pavements. So I think we need a wider approach to look at just how bad the parking situation is for residents in Cumbernauld and to identify a strategy to go forward and improve that.
That was on your thoughts, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. I think that's a good point. I mean, I've also noticed things like vehicles being parked on the main ring road, and also quite a lot of caravans being parked in off-road parking bays, which I'm advised there's not really much that can be done about them, but I definitely think that there is an issue that needs to be looked at. Anybody get any views? That's something that we can take forward. Matt?
I'll certainly take on board the points that have been raised, and certainly we can pass that to our colleagues in the roads management service to see if we can get any feedback from there. That's something that we need some professional assessments to be carried out in relation to that. It might be worthwhile, Adam, if you don't mind, if we could maybe link up with the comments that Adam's made to one of the senior roads officers to see what kind of information can be gleaned and what information the council might already hold, and that could certainly be fed in. But in terms of the communities team, it's not something we could do to take forward on a basis from our team, but we can certainly tie into other professional disciplines within the council to see what information we can get on that. Happy to do that.
Great stuff, Adam. You happy with that? Yeah.
Well, I think the law deals with transportation, and that's where that would go. On a quick overview, and I take Adam's point, and he's very right in saying it, as far as parking is concerned, but I don't know how and where you find the space to create parking space, parking bays, because people won't use them unless they're close to their house. In fact, they want to park in the front door, and I must admit I'm one of those. But I think that's a good point. We should take up Matt's point on it and let Adam go and talk to the traffic officers.
Thank you. Okay, Adam, wayfinding and signage?
Yeah, so again, this is something else that will probably sit with the.
Sorry, Adam,
the
I think Councillor Barclay and Councillor Gold had their hand up. Chair.
Yep.
Sorry, thanks for that. Claire and then Willie.
Sorry, Suzanne. It was just obviously it's about parking, and I know that there was a meeting. I can't remember what it was, but it was Leanne. You were at the meeting, and we discussed, and it was to do with because of the parking issues on the Cumbernauld ring road, and about the problems that we had there, and also I agree with Adam on there's and others on the Cumbernauld ring road. There are many issues. Not necessarily all within the old part of Cumbernauld, because there's plenty of issues in the new part as well, but a lot of it is to do with parking. And if we go down the road of just continually making new parking spaces, there still will never be enough. And there's been a lot of issues that I've spoken to Inspector MacLeod about, that we've tried to get resolutions, but there's a lot of it's to do with the legal constraints that we have within the new town, because there aren't specific parking regulations that cover a lot of these things. So the police's hands are tied, and also the council's hands are tied. So we do need to have an overall look at the whole of the parking situation within Cumbernauld, because we also have issues of people who are running businesses from their home. And so they may well have umpteen vans that are actually are working from a particular house, and they're taking up all of the parking spaces, but they're entitled because they're taxed and insured. So there's actually not a lot we can do with that. So I think there definitely does need to be what I think was discussed at a previous meeting, could be 18 months, 2 years ago, about looking at an overall strategy for Cumbernauld to do with parking, because just creating more parking spaces is not the answer. We could have no grass whatsoever and parking bays everywhere, and there still wouldn't be enough. It's a difficult one, very difficult one.
Councillor Goldie.
Something I've been heavily involved with for years and years and years and years, in just about every area. Condora, Seafar, Ravenswood, Carbrain. Certainly they've all had major issues. Around our schools just now, I was part of a short life working group on how we could stop people parking irresponsibly around the schools. That's been delayed by COVID. We haven't been able to meet on that. We've come up with some kind of suggestions. Major issues we have is that because it says in the highway code you don't park in a cycle lane or a bus stop or whatever of that, there's no road traffic orders there, and they can't really be enforced. And Neil and his team will be pulling their hair out, because decriminalisation of parking means that the police only can really act in areas where there's obstruction going on, you know, and they go down. But every area in Cumbernauld is exactly the same. Carbrain, I think, was built for 0.8 cars per household. Now most households have got at least one. Even the idea of building properties for older residents and assuming that they won't have cars, which we still do, doesn't work either. My mother's 85 and she still drives. She's in Glasgow. She's got space outside her house. But fine, okay, we can look at parking strategies for Cumbernauld. We can look at how we can try and improve things. Unfortunately, there's no easy answer, and most of the stuff on that, we're talking again about the projects. Most of it's all in parking, because it's areas like Green Rig Road or around the schools or wherever, where the residents can't get parked, and then when the school traffic comes in as well, no one can get parked. It's the same when you look at around Our Lady's High School. If you look up Highland Road, there's maybe parking in the schools. Don't know who it is, maybe it's the teachers or whatever. As Alex says, people want to park right next to where they're wanting to go. We've got a big parking right at Greenfields, and yet we still have the lunacy of parents parking outside on the main road at the small island in Greenfields Road. Fine, we can look at it. What the officers in the roads, they are constrained by their budgets financially. They don't have an awful lot they can do. If we're going to look at a strategy, look at a long-term one, but that long strategy's got to maybe move away from the use of the car onto public transport, and whether that's a palatable one for the public, I don't know. Sorry to be the bringer of bad news.
Thank you. I'm looking at some of the chat, and Leanne's made a couple of really good points about linking it into the transport priority within the LOIP, and also I think the really key point is about behaviours and about responsible parking, and so maybe there's something that we could do around that. So that good points around that, because you're right, the behaviours is definitely an issue, and there's another comment about a wheelchair user. Again, really valid points. I think these things that we do need to have a look at, and for me that comes back down to behaviours as well. Billy, I can see your hand up, and then anyone else?
Yeah, it's just sorry, okay, Susan. Yeah, it's just you know, I don't know if any of the councillors, I know we're on councillors, and as Willie Goldie was saying for years, you know, what went on about parking. Well, I can assure you in our area, I think they're trying to park on top of one another in Westfield, because there is no parking facility at all left in Westfield. Every cul-de-sac you get into, you're lucky if you can get into it. You know, my daughter just come up last week and had to park away up at the school, quite a bit away from my house. And really, I think parking's been a big issue in Cumbernauld, you know, since ever it was built, probably. Except when I moved here at first, it was okay. Must remember, see families, it's 2 and 3 cars now, so that.
That's right, absolutely. I've got Tom Johnson.
Yeah, it's just a point that you said earlier there about responsible parking. I take it that every parking lot does now have painted lines. I've had complaints about that in the past, and we should really be making sure that they're painted with lines so that we squeeze in the number of cars that these parking lots were actually designed for. I'm sure that's a cheap option which could probably help a bit if there are still areas that are without these painted lines.
Good point. I think that's something that we can take take on board as part of the ongoing discussions. I think we're kind of Adam, do you want to come back in? Is there anything you want to maybe sum up on?
No, I mean, all the points that have been made are points that I've observed. Excuse me, I've observed myself, and I can pick up with the council's roads team. Matt, do you want me to go direct to roads, or would you rather provide a contact for me to pick this up with?
I'll get a contact sorted for that, Adam. I'll send an email this evening to the team to start to progress that.
Okay, thanks.
Smashing. Okay, so we're okay to move on now to wayfinding and signage. Adam.
Yeah, and actually this is something else that's probably going to sit with the roads team. So there's two aspects to this. One is about helping people to find walking routes around Cumbernauld. Obviously, what we've seen through COVID is more people have been confined to their local area and have been exploring more. But what I've been seeing on some social media is people saying, why does Cumbernauld not have any pavements? Now, of course, we know that's not the case, but it's just that people don't seem to know safe walking routes in their area. I'll use an example of someone I know in Cumbernauld who was going to Cumbernauld and only knew the roadway, so ended up walking along the Wilderness Brae in Central Way to get to Cumbernauld. So one thing I think we could do is look at working with organisations like probably Cumbernauld Living Landscape about promoting safe walking routes through the town. I think that there's people who have lived all their life in Cumbernauld and don't necessarily know the safe walking routes from one part to another. So I think that's one thing that would be useful for us to look at. The other aspect when talking about wayfinding and signage is about road signs. We've still got a number of road signs in the town that point to facilities, amenities, which are long since closed. So, for example, I think on Central Way, there's a sign to the court. And in Westfield, I think there's a sign to the school that closed down a number of years ago. So we're needing the signage to be refreshed. But also, when I spoke to somebody from roads a number of years ago, they said that it's a policy to only have street signs, but not directing people to amenities and facilities. So, for example, in Cumbernauld, we've got yellow signs under the street names to point to things like shops, schools, that kind of thing. Apparently, it's the policy of the council's roads department not to have those signs. But again, it goes back to Cumbernauld being designed differently as a new town, and it's something that I think we should retain, because there are people who, again, will come to a town and not know where to find things they might be looking for. So that was just another point I wanted to make.
Thank you. Any comments, or are we happy to feed that back into the officers, Matt? Councillor Goldie?
I have tried to get signs replaced, signposting where shops and that are, and the council take the attitude now that it's a commercial property and it would be up to the commercial property to signpost their location. So they haven't been replacing the signs because of that. That was certainly a few years back. You can try again, but I think it's unlikely that they will go back and do it again. But certainly that was the thoughts when I tried to get them replaced the last time.
I was just going to say, Chair, Matt Castelli, I was just going to say just about Councillor Goldie said that's feedback we had a few years ago for a number of areas about that it is commercial properties or other enterprises that the signs were advertising predominantly, and that they were sticking to main road signs given distances and directional signs, and that's really all the things we're putting in. But again, we can ask the question as part of that to see what the feedback is.
I think that'd be helpful, and also if we could ask that, you know, the signs that relate to places that are no longer existing, if they could maybe be removed.
Yep, I'll ask the question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Happy with that, Adam?
Yeah, just to kind of make a kind of final point on that topic, is I've noticed that somebody had hit the sign at Ivanhoe Road, and that has now been replaced. But the sign that was pointing to the bowling club has now disappeared in line with what we're talking about. But I think that for commercial properties, that's fair enough. But I think for community facilities, things like community centres, schools, we should still have those yellow signs at the entrance to streets to guide people to them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're happy to move on to the final item, which is the planning, engagement and consultation from Adam.
Yeah, thanks. So you'll be glad to hear this is the final one from me. So this was just a point that I've raised at a number of these meetings now, is about engagement and consultation with planning and the representation and attendance at these meetings, because we always used to have someone from planning at the local area partnership meetings, and that was really useful, especially when we have major planning applications, as we do now. I think as well that for certain major planning applications, there is interest from wider than just the area that they are going into. So where there are community councils adjacent to those areas, they should also be part of the consultation and engagement process. And also, and I know that this would be a matter for planning, but I think that we should be looking to cast the net wider on neighbour notifications, because I know that the boundary is really very small on that in terms of people who get notified for planning applications in their local area. And I know that there will be a standard that planning applies, but I feel that we shouldn't just be adhering to the minimum standard. We should be making sure that people are as fully aware as possible of planning applications in their local area as they can be. Thanks.
Is that something, Matt, that you would anticipate being able to have planning people at meetings like this?
I think the situation would be that if there was a particular planning application that wanted to be discussed and that the planning team could input to, then certainly we can make the request. I don't think it's something where we consider having a planning rep on the community board all the time. If something was coming up like a major plan application, if further information was required regarding that for the board, then we can happily facilitate that. We've also been in discussion with the planning section regarding this, and they've come up with a kind of briefing note for the services that are provided and the process, and we'll be issuing that to all the community boards over the next week or so to give more information. And we're happy to discuss that at future board and consider whether more than that is required. But bear in mind, we will be happy to raise any issues directly with the planning team and appropriate advice and assistance given.
Thank you very much. I've got Alex.
Just on that last point of, I think that's a good solution that Matt's proposed to us, because we know the planning applications that are coming out, and there's also a draft agenda goes out for this meeting. So if someone has a particular aspect of a planning that's come to the fore, then that is the opportunity to say, I would like to discuss this at the next board meeting, and the appropriate planning officer would come along.
Anyone else?
Could just say that, Chair, just on Alex's point, there's certainly something we can raise that with the planning team to ensure that they can pick up on the particular issues that the board has. And so we've had that discussion with them and encourage them to ensure that the sufficient information that we can share with the board in relation to planning applications is made available. But bear in mind that information or complaints, comments, objections regarding that, there is a planning portal within the council that can be used for that purpose, and information can be fed in. And there is obviously going to be changes to the planning approaches that will come through in due course, and we will keep the community board fully informed in relation to that also.
Thank you very much. Adam, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to last but not least, input from community planning partners. So,
sorry, Chair, could I apologies. I wondered, I'd said at the very beginning, one of my colleagues was here from Cumbernauld Theatre Trust, and I wondered if he was going to just do a very short input on just to introduce himself really, and just to kind of a briefing and then potential of more information coming out at the next community board meeting. And that was Ian, who should be there somewhere.
I think it's in the chat that he actually had to leave.
Oh, did he? Oh, sorry, I never saw that.
Yeah, it was a little bit back, but yeah, he had to go to another meeting. So, but ideally, we can ask him to come back to the next board with maybe a fuller presentation.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Because there's two within this community engagement team for the new theatre, and there's lots of. I met them just the other day. There's lots of really good plans for engaging, and ensuring that certain heard voices, those who don't necessarily have the means, are given the opportunity to utilise the theatre it's like anyone else. So there's good plans coming, and I think there's going to be promotion of that in the next wee while. But they'll certainly do a little presentation. So I think try and get them onto the agenda for the next meeting. Sorry, Chair, I didn't realise because I had to nip out to another meeting with the provost. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, David, over to yourself. Your update.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I circulated, or I asked Christine to circulate the performance activity report, so I'm happy to speak to any of the figures on that. So that's probably the first thing, if anybody has anything on any of the instant statistics that were within the report.
Okay,
nope.
Thank you.
That's fine.
I think it's a really good format. I think it really works well. Anybody get any questions, comments?
Okay, so that covers the kind of statistics. I'll just touch on the community engagement we've been doing. That report covers Q4 of last year, and we were still kind of restricted due to lockdown. Thankfully, the restrictions are easing, and we're starting to engage more with the community. During that time, you spoke about the secondary fires earlier, Suzanne, and that's where we've been kind of targeting our resources by doing virtual presentations to the schools, and that's been working quite well, the feedback we've been getting from the schools. We've also been delivering, along with colleagues in Police Scotland, it used to be called Cycle Proficiency. It's now changed its name. I think it's called Bikeability Scotland. So as part of that, we've had one of our officers trained in delivering courses, and we've also been getting the operational crews down to deliver road safety talks and road safety awareness. So that's kind of ongoing. And that's in, let's say, in partnership with North Lanarkshire Active Schools and Police Scotland. Another positive aspect to that is that any kids without a bike are being given a free bike, and that's coming through the Restorative Justice Programme, where they're recycling bikes, which is really, really good. Some of these kids can't afford their own bikes, so they're getting given bikes through that project as well. And another issue that's kind of come up on the board tonight, and it's to do with the kind of fly tipping. There's an initiative called Keeping Scotland Beautiful campaign, and I believe the Cabrain and Hillcrest Community Council have launched an initiative regarding that. It's just to let them know that one of my colleagues will be in touch regarding that, to see if we can also tie in with you when you're doing that initiative, to doorstep the kind of households in that area and raise awareness of the fly tipping and the issues that causes, both to us and the wider community. So that's the kind of community engagement. And the last part I'd just like to draw your attention to is to do with recruitment. Our recruitment kind of methodology has changed now, and there's year-round recruitment within the fire service. But I also circulated some positive action recruitment events that are occurring within the next month, and this is specifically targeting underrepresented groups and ethnic minority groups. So there's a series of dates and events, and I'd welcome you to share that with your wider community contacts and encourage them. Any information is within the report I've provided, and also within the SFRS website. That's about it from me, and I'm happy to take any questions on any of that.
That's smashing. Thank you very much. Just to let folks know that Francis from Caribbean Community and Hillcrest Community Council has been with us, but is having real problems with their IT. So I thought I'd just mention that while you had name checked them. Okay, Billy, I think I've got you, and then I'll take points from anyone else. Go ahead, Billy. Yeah.
It's just, you know, David was talking about, you know, the cycle project. Just to, I think David already probably knows, the crime prevention panel, get funding, and we have been with Police Scotland and doing a bike mapping project along the schools with the kids. It's been a big success, Suzanne. We've done, I think it was St Lucy's, Cumbernauld was the last school, just yesterday, and I can make Cumbernauld was in the Friday when it was pouring of rain, of course, and I was away enjoying myself that weekend. But John King, I know, loved taking that over, and he told me it was quite hard, you know, trying to mark the bikes, you know, and that sort of condition. But the last two schools were actually excellent, Suzanne. We're next to three schools. It's St Mary's, Westfield, and St Helens in Cumbernauld. And as I say, the kids love it. And I must say, North Lanarkshire, I don't know, it's activity group, David, but they are excellent. What they're doing for the kids, you know, is tremendous. You know, giving them bikes, teaching them cycling there on the day, and then if they've not got a bike, they're giving them a bike. So congratulations to the council that, you know, doing that. You know, I don't normally congratulate the council, but I will do it this time. I know Matt, I see this in Matt's face. So, you know, just I'd like to bring in one other thing while I'm on this, Suzanne. Cumbernauld Community Forum, at their last gala day, their theme was to get funding for defibrillators. We managed to have funding, and we've actually bought 5 defibrillators, and we've given 2 at the moment to 2 of the churches, you know, Cornerstone and Freedom City Church. The other ones we were giving was to give to Free Council buildings, but we've got a wee bit of a problem with these, Suzanne, so I don't want to get into detail on it, you know, but I will speak to Matt about it, and maybe I'll be able to. I don't want to see them sitting in a cupboard. They cost a lot of money, and I think we should get them out, because they're lifesavers, let's put it that way, you know. Okay, Suzanne.
That's brilliant, Billy, well done, and thanks. Yeah, I'm sure Matt will be happy to talk off table about that. Councillor Goldie, you on then?
Aye, thanks. It's just really to say to David or that it's good to work with Cumbernauld Community Council. Have you had any contact with the Green Rig Millcroft Tenants and Residents Association? Because that would be quite good to get some kind of engagement with them. I know your guys regularly get in touch about dumped stuff and that and the closes or that, but just is there anything that we could do positive with them?
Yeah, Councillor, there is the Watch Commander with that reference for that area, Watch Commander Chris Rock. He is, I don't know if he's been in contact or he's going to contact them, but that's certainly an area they're targeting within their ward engagement activities. I think they've already carried out a number of leaflet drops in the Millcroft flats, because even after targeting the bin chutes in the common areas, that problem has started to spill out onto the street. So that's an issue we're aware of, and we're trying to target resources specifically in that area. So the short answer is yes, and I can find out more detail and feed that back to you about the actual strategy around about that.
That's smashing, thank you. Cool. Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, and last but very not least, Neil from Strathclyde Police Scotland, sorry.
Aye, thanks again. I'll try and be as brief as I can, because I know time is marching on. So just to summarise over the main events over the last period, so since the 1st of March to present day, I've looked at. So for violent crime, serious assaults and robberies, we've had 5 serious assaults over the period and 1 robbery, and I'm pleased to report that an arrest has been made for each one of these incidents. Onto house breakings. For the month of March, we had 4 in total, 1 in Kildrum and 3 in Greenfalls area. There was an arrest made for the 1 in Kildrum and for 2 out of 3 of the incidents in Greenfalls. In the month of April, we had 3 house breakings in the Abram Hill area. Out of that, 1 arrest has been made. We had 1 incident in Westfield and 1 in Kildrum. Inquiries ongoing for each of these. And so far for the month of May, we've had 2 house breakings in Abram Hill. Both of these inquiries are very much ongoing. Onto drugs, probably worth highlighting, there's been 48 separate incidents of drug misuse, either possession or supply. And amongst that, just want to highlight, there's been 3 cannabis cultivations of note. The first one in Spruce Road, Abram Hill, that was in March. Large-scale cultivation was recovered from there with an estimated value of £15,000. There was then another cannabis cultivation recovered in Main Road in Cumbernauld in April with an estimated value of £4,000. Then in the 9th of May, another cannabis cultivation, this time Millcroft Road in Cumbernauld, and that had an estimated street value of £90,000. And the reason I'm highlighting them is, and I'm sure that David would back me up here, is that the real danger posed by them in terms of risk of fire, because what is always associated with the cultivations that we recover is that the electricity is bypassed in a rather amateur fashion, because nobody fancies paying the electricity bills for the high-powered lights that are required for these cultivations. Many of these cultivations are found to be within blocks of flats as well, so the fire risk is a real issue, and that's why we would always encourage our community to report any suspicious activity. And I include in that windows being permanently covered, comings and goings regularly from properties that don't appear to have anybody staying in them. Always worth reporting, and we'll give it a look. So if I could just emphasise that point. Which takes me on to Walthall fire raising. We've had 4 reported since the beginning of March, and out of that, 2 of them arrests have been made, and I already touched earlier on one of them, which was a 13-year-old boy arrested for setting fire to an area of grassland near to the rugby pitches in Cumbernauld. Thanks to our colleagues in the fire and rescue service, their swift attendance, they managed to prevent that from spreading to nearby houses. Antisocial behaviour, again, touching it earlier on. Fair to say we have seen a spike in that recently. Obviously the good weather, albeit sporadically, is coming back to us. So with that, it goes hand in hand with increased reports of youths gathering in various areas around Cumbernauld. Probably the most prevalent areas are Cumbernauld Community Park and again Cumbernauld up the rugby pitches there. So some will be aware, the weekend of the 30th of April, we had an action plan in place, and we had the assistance of the mounted branch. They came out, so that was really effective in terms of there was a recovery of a huge amount of alcohol. There were a lot of youths engaged with, some charged, some taken back to their parents and guardians. And it's worth doing these things just to emphasise that it is a real issue and emphasise the problem to parents and guardians. So that's something we're looking to introduce to other areas as well. For instance, this weekend we've got the mounted branch out again to assist us down in Kilsyth. So if any of you were intending on going down there with your cargo of cider this weekend, maybe make alternative arrangements. But certainly we'll be revisiting Cumbernauld, and it's our intention in 2 weeks' time to be doing the same in Community Park as well. In terms of other trends, frauds, I know I spoke about that at the last meeting, and I'm not going to go into any detail with that, but just to emphasise that it is still very much an issue, bogus emails and phone calls, a real spike in that, particularly aimed at the most vulnerable in our communities, the elderly in our communities. So in an effort to counter that and get the message across, we got the help of our local pharmacies, who have been more than willing to assist us in getting advice leaflets, safety leaflets attached to repeat prescriptions, particularly for the elderly in our community. So that work is very much ongoing. Other engagement activities, Billy stole my thunder there in terms of the bike marking scheme. Yeah, but certainly worth emphasising that as an excellent initiative. Lynn Poles representing the police with that one and pushing that one on, but it has been very well received, and that's one that's continuing. And that's it for me, thanks.
Smashing. Councillor Goldie.
Thanks. I just really like to thank Neil for the work that was carried out in Cumbernauld, and also the ongoing communication from the community boys with myself. Sean and Murray have both been in touch on issues, and it's been really good that they're letting us know what's happening. And it's also just to belatedly thank Eddie for he's moved on, and Stevie Shanks, who's retired, and I think Stevie will certainly be a big miss. I've not met Jamie yet, but Stevie was certainly a guy that you could rely on to get things done, and a guy that was always fairly honest in what was achievable. Cheers.
Smashing. Thank you. Anybody else? Any more? I think, I mean, I would say in terms of the engagement with young people, I do think that we have a bit of a job to do in terms of, you know, maybe trying to engage with our young residents and our young people in the town. And, you know, it would be unfair to demonise them all, I suppose, in terms of the sort of evening activities. And for me, I think some of the issues around those activities are about littering and, you know, the environmental aspects of what they're doing. So it'll be good to be able to sort of promote that engagement further under the law as well. So any other points anybody wants to make?
I was maybe just going to say, Chair, that, you know, talking about the kind of youth engagement, and there's a change coming very soon, actually, in relation to the community boards, where there's now going to be a youth voice organisation specifically for Cumbernauld, whereas before it was kind of a youth forum for Cumbernauld and Kilsyth. So it's going to be specifically for Cumbernauld, which will be far more targeted, and hopefully will encourage more engagement with young people through the schools and through what kind of informal kind of education structures and through CLD and our other partners. And it's a shame that Lindsay had to go to another meeting, but she could have explained it further. But there's going to be there's a report going to committee soon about kind of the different structures in relation to kind of youth voice in Cumbernauld and the kind of engagement that's going to come from that. So hopefully that'll kind of support that and encourage that kind of voice. And yes, absolutely, obviously with our you know, we've got hard to reach young people, and I know that our CLD team are really trying within the confines of COVID at the moment to try and target those. But hopefully Lindsay can maybe offer more information at the next board. But if there's information comes out before then, we'll certainly circulate it, because I think they're quite excited by this kind of new structure and how advantageous it can be, and far more targeted within the board area.
That's really good, and yeah, really looking forward to being able to engage more with them. So smashing.
You're on mute, Chair.
Yes. Get my buttons mixed up there. That takes us to any other business. So if anybody has anything, can you make it known now? Otherwise, we'll close the meeting.
Can I just say one thing?
Suzanne, can I just ask Colin, you know, about Mairead and how she had, you know, Mairead was a good friend of mine, you know, and I can't get in contact, I've not got detail, but maybe Colin can tell me a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I absolutely, Billy, and I actually saw Mairead today, and I have to say, considering she's had quite a traumatic experience, she was in a car crash, and she's broke a bone in her neck, and she had a little bleed in the brain, but she's at home. She's actually looking very well. She was very pleased to see me, which is not all people would say that, to be fair. But no, I actually, and we were able. I was able to go up and have a good chat with her. So she's actually looking very good, Billy, considering what she's gone through. I've passed on. I've been all sorts of phone calls and all sorts of emails from people passing on their best wishes, and I've done that. And honestly, she's very, very touched by everybody's consideration. You know, she has now retired from. She has. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think that, you know, absolutely, she's doing well, and she will enjoy life as we move forward, and she's good, and she knows everybody's sending best wishes.
Thanks very much, Colin.
Somebody else was wanting to come in there. I wasn't quite sure who it was.
Hi, it's me, Suzanne. Raymond Taylor from the Health and Social Care Partnership. Very quickly, just to say that the next phase of a vaccination, if you're lucky enough to be aged between 30 to 39, will kick off next week. So just to make people aware of that. And Anne, I don't know if you want to add anything at all from a health improvement perspective.
Raymond, I'm really sorry that I didn't recognise you there. Maybe we could get you added on, you know, sort of routinely as an update.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
I think it would be quite useful. It would certainly be helpful from our perspective.
Yeah.
Anne?
I'm taking the notes for tonight's meeting as well, hence the reason I've been rattling away here. I've not been answering emails, I've been taking notes. So I don't have anything to add, because Leanne done a very good job about talking about the LOIPs and the work that the health improvement team have been involved in around that agenda. So that's been our main focus around the community board work, has been part of those subgroups for the LOIPs for the last few months. So I don't have anything else to add in respect of health improvement. Unless you have anything, Raymond, that you want me to add and I don't know about it.
No, we'll pick up next time. Okay, right, thanks.
Jared?
Hi, it's just, I suppose, just to make a bit of an update from an education perspective over the summer. The Scottish Government has given a significant amount of money to councils for a summer programme for children and young people. So that's for our early years, primary, secondary, and our ASM pupils. So this money will be used, and the programme is called Bounce Back. There's a plan being developed at the moment. It will be a programme that will be for in hubs, which will be in north central south area, and this will be on during the summer. More information is to come, but just to make you aware that this money has come in from Scottish Government targeting our vulnerable children and those affected as a result of the lockdown. So it's just so that partners are aware of this, and certainly it will be targeted to families to ensure that children and young people attend. It is not a food programme per se. It is about an active programme during the summer break. So by that, what I mean is our partners like Community Learning Development, Active Schools, etc., will be involved in delivering that programme. As I say, it's being developed at the moment. The money's just not long in, but I think it will be pretty successful and probably welcomed by families across North Lanarkshire. Just a quick update about that. Thanks, Chair.
That's great, and it sounds absolutely brilliant, Jared. It's nice to see that we're able to invest in some of the families that really need that level of support, particularly over the summer. Smashing. Okay, is that us then? We're all done?
Suzanne.
Yep.
Suzanne, sorry, I don't know if you saw I had my hand up.
No, I didn't. Who am I speaking to?
Adam.
Adam, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right. I'll be brief. It was just to say that I'm not sure if the council has any intentions about a COVID memorial of some kind, but I know that the Scottish Government has made £4.1 million available to councils and community groups to commemorate the impact of COVID in their local area. So it's just to kind of flag, I'm not sure if the council has any intentions for that, but I think it would be good to have something in place for people like myself who are affected by COVID. Thanks.
Okay, we can maybe ask Matt to have a look at that, and if there's anything maybe circulate to us.
Yep, we'll find out, Chair, if there's any plans for that, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, that is. Apologies for not being able to see, but I'm unable to see the hands on my screen here, so my apologies for that. Anyway, thanks everybody. That's been a really excellent meeting tonight. I think there's been lots of really positive contributions. Date and time of next meeting, Monday the 23rd of August, 6:30 till whenever we finish, I guess. Thanks to the officers for attendance tonight, and to everybody else for contributing, and we'll see you in August.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers, then.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye. Bye.